This recording is for Primary Math 2. We're working on the class recording for week 2, and this is actually a very short week as far as assignments go. I'm using this week to complete all the assignments in the section titled Numbers to 1,000, and so it doesn't have a lot of work assigned. If you are just getting into school and trying to finish up summer and start school, that's okay. You will have very little to do. If you are all the way in full swing and you're ready to go, you might want to do a little bit extra this week, because there'll be weeks when you'll be busy and somebody will get sick, and the ebb and flow of homeschooling. So just so you know, this will be a very light week, and you can plan accordingly, either to do extra this week or to just enjoy it. And that's okay. In the workbook, we're going to do exercises 6 and 7 in intensive practice, pages 8 through 13, and there are no word problems in this particular topic, and so I didn't assign any on the syllabus for this week. So let's talk about the workbook. Again, we're just working on getting the numbers to 1,000 solidified in our mind, place value, and all those kinds of things. Exercise 6 is all about reading numbers and identifying them, or reading them and then writing them in numerical form, and then reading them and writing them in word form. So page 23, I had a very reluctant writer. Page 23 could be practically a whole week's worth of work all by itself. Not quite that bad. But we are learning to write numbers in words, and it is a long process. There's a lot of spelling involved, a lot of copying involved. Those are itty-bitty lines for all the words that I have to write. So take that into account. They could write it on their own paper. You could label the on the sheet where the owl is, you could label those A through F, and in the blanks you could have your child write 804 is letter F, and you could shorten it that way. We want them to learn to write, but if that's a frustrating moment, then good golly, let's not frustrate them in math with all the writing that they do. Number 7 is just more working on adding tens, subtracting tens, adding hundreds, subtracting hundreds. Not a big thing, very simple. Again, this will be a really, really easy week. But even still, the first semester we finished in 16 weeks, and we're taking 18 weeks for the second semester, just because of the way the workbooks work. And I didn't want to make it 17 and 17 and stretch the A books out any longer and make the B books go by faster. There's plenty in the second semester to do. So we'll just leave it like this, and even though it's only the second week, take a little bit of a shorter week when it comes. The intensive practice, pages 8 to 13, it does at least have some interesting concepts in here that we need to think through, and you need to make sure you're solid on. I don't expect them to be hard for you, but when you have the digits 3 and 9 and 0, the largest number you can make out of those digits is 930. The smallest number you can make out of those digits is 309. Number 12 also has an interesting concept to it. Part A, the fact that there are 100 ones in 100 is obvious. Part B, something we've said before, we need to make sure we understand that there are 10 tens in 100. So when you look at the number 100, this is how many tens there are, right? If it's 5, there are 5 tens. 150 has 15 tens, and that is something that's going to make mental math and some of the other things we do later on very easy when you're doing something like that. Look at number 15 on page 9. When they talk about the place value of the digit 8, the place value is that it is in the hundreds place. But then on B, the value of the digit 6, well, that is just 6 because it's a 6, but the digit 4 stands for 40, or 4 tens. And the total of digits 8 and 6 is 806 because the digit 8 is 800 and the digit 6 is 6. So by that they mean 806. And so they talk about a value, they talk about a place value, and they talk about a digit. So make sure you're thinking in how they're doing it. And I think part D there could be confusing, but I think the point is to just help our students understand how they're wording the questions. On the next page 10, there's a lot of patterns. Those patterns go in pretty predictable ways all the way through. I think page 10, number F, might be an interesting one. Given this problem and this information, sometimes patterns are odd to notice. The first number, 20, 17, 14, and then that number, notice that those first numbers always go down by 3. And so really all we have to do to solve this is to put the number 11 there because it goes down by 3. Notice the second numbers always go down by 4. And so there's a pattern within each pairing. The numbers always work out like that. Finally, just a tip and a hint for number 17. When it asks you to say if something is greater than, less than, or equal to, when it says something like 35 tens on one side and 350, maybe that's obvious to your child, but you could always take the words and actually write it as a number and then compare number to number. Believe it or not, it's a developmental issue for students to be able to take 35 tens and compare it straight to 350 is harder. It's a two-step mental problem, but if you change it to 350 first and then compare the numbers, you're in good shape. Same thing with letter A. If you're comparing 708 to 700 plus 80, some of your students will be able to do it without writing anything down. Some of them will be well served by adding those together and then realizing, okay, 780 is the greater number, so 708, and I guess actually they want you to use words, so 708 is less than 780. So if you need to do it as a two-step problem, that's perfectly fine to do. The Take the Challenge problems in each of these books are very good thinking skills problems. They're usually less mathematical and more thinking skills, and I would strongly encourage you not to skip them. I know they take time. Hopefully the recordings will be helpful to you on these. Generally, the Take the Challenge are at the end of a word problem section and on a word problems recording, but I'll just include them here since we don't have any true word problems in this particular section. At least none that they set off as word problems. So number 1 makes that chart, and it wants you to tell them what column the number 423 is going to be in and what column the number 571 is going to be in, and they want to have you mark all of them and see what they're going to become. The thing to notice in the column is that it goes by 5s. And I'm going to change colors for the second column just because it'll make it easiest for us to see. Because then when it goes back to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then we have the other one 16 through 20, and I won't go any further than this, but the point of it is this. Anytime I have a number that ends in a 3, it's always going to be in this column, column C. Anytime I have a number that ends in a 1, it's going to be in column A. So all we have to do is look at the ending number. The only numbers that ever end in 2 always fall in column B, right? And if you look at each of those, you'll see all the 10s, the even numbers, end in column E. All the 9s end in column D. So they're all right there. The second problem of this lists the balloons with the numbers on them, and it gives you a bunch of clues to figure out which one they're talking about. And certainly, as you go, you would just look at a clue and see what which ones are canceled out based on that. I am more than 20 tens. Well, if your child writes next to that more than 200, that'd be great. But you know what? All of those numbers are more than 200, so that didn't really help us any. Then it tells you that it's less than 300. Well, less than 300 gets rid of 2 options. And then we know that I'm between 270, actually it's 200 plus 70, and 400s. Now, we already know that it's less than 300, so the fact that it's between 270 and 400 is not exactly all that I know, but according to this one it is. 270 is lower than my number, so that allows me to mark out these two and come up with only that one. Certainly nothing wrong with trial and error, and that's all we have. We have the logic of it and solving it in that fashion. Number 3. This problem gives us this information. We're going to use the numbers 2 to 10. We're going to find a sum of 18, both in the vertical, horizontal, and diagonal direction. I guess that's not a both, that's an all. That's a crummy 18. We fix that too. And then we also know that our numbers are only used once. So some of these we can look at and say, you know, this square has 2 around it. This square has 2 around it. This one, I know 2 of the 3, and this one I know 2 of the 3. I can very quickly put those numbers in. So we can find each of those values really easily because we have to add to 18. This currently gives us 8, which means we need 10 to get to 18. This column currently gives us 12, which means we need 6 to get to 18. This currently gives us 11, which needs 7 to get to 18. And currently I have 9, which needs 9 more to get to 18. And so then this last box, I have several different options to look at. Both directions have 16 for a sum, and 16 needs 2 to get to 18. I've not reused any of my numbers. I have used 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, each number one time, and all of them add up to 18. I guess the last thing I could do to check and make absolutely sure would be to add my diagonals, because I haven't done that yet, and that's 9 and 9 is 18, and this diagonal, oops, meant to highlight it but I didn't, 11 and 7 is also 18, so that really convinces me that I have the right answer, which makes me very happy. Number 4 wants to know all of the possible 3-digit numbers that I could write using the digits 7, 5, and 1. And all the digits in the 3-digit number are going to be different. In other words, 777 is not an option. So we go back to thinking in a methodical way. If I start with the number 7, either the next number is 1 or the next number is 5, and the third number is going to be whichever one I haven't used yet. In the same way, I could start with the number 5, and the next digit could be 7, or the number 5 could be the first one, and the next digit could be a 1. If I start with a 1, either 5 is next or 7 is next, and so all told, there are 6 possible options of numbers that I could write using those 3 digits. Those are the only 6 that I could possibly write using the digits 7, 5, and 1. And that is the end of the intensive practice and the class recording for week 2. Thank you very much.